So as we start into our session here today, as promised last week, we're going to be jumping in and looking at kits. And just as there was a lot of we asked some kind of questions of like what areas were do people want to talk about related to kits, and there was definitely some specific ones that got mentioned, a lot of stuff in various categories. But to start with, I'm going to put something in your little chat window there. Hopefully you can find that or see that in your webinar controls. So just put that there. That's a link to our knowledge base section, which will take you to the first video in a series that we have on kits. And that will cover a lot of the basics as well as maybe a few of the specific points that you might be after. So grab that link if you can and hold that. And there's, like I said, a collection of 6 or 7 videos, I think, that go into different aspects of kits, generally speaking. So for those of you who are just wanting just some of the really the basics and just want to have kind of a walkthrough step by step, definitely avail yourself of that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into kind of the kits area, and we're going to kind of go through some of the basics in a sense, but really going to use that as a really way to kind of jump into a little bit of the crevices, if you will. Some of the things that maybe are worth noting that can be handy things to keep in mind as you work with kits. So with that said, really kind of a starting place for this is uh, a decision that you need to make before you actually start creating the kit, which maybe sounds a little bit funny. But it really relates to the idea of what is going to be the parent item, what's going to be the top level item that drives everything else. And the reason that this matters, there can be a couple of reasons, but the most notable is picking the application that's going to give you the most or the most useful information that's for the child items. And so what I mean by that is let's take a look at this barge kit real quick, or this barge closed soffit. So I've had this barge kit right here. It has a bunch of stuff in here, but if I go to add a kit component, we're going to skip past all this top stuff and look just down here, down to the equation section. And you can see each of these entries here, like the CT, which is a reference in each of these are a reference in the parent item. So like what the parent item has been measured or the inputs that have been made there. So like how many items are in the parent, what the total linear footage is, or what's the QL list of the parent, or what's the total output count that's like of the actual product that's going out the door. So in the case of Barb's, this is a pretty extensive set of information that you can pull from the parent item to actually drive the child items. So picking something that is going to give you the most flexibility to be at the top level is going to what's going to work out best for you. So just a simple example, and in some ways, this may not relate directly to all of you as far as your use, but I think it'll illustrate the point and you'll catch what I'm saying. Let's say that I wanted to create a little kit related to CMU blocks, so like a block wall. And from that block wall, I wanted to be able to drive things like, a linear footage of rebar, and for every on-center spacing of the rebar or of the wall, I wanted to add a vertical stick of rebar and some H reinforcement and some mortar and some cement and all these things that I might want to drive from it. If I come in here and I start creating a kit and I look in for a CMU, I'll call it that, and I'm start looking at the parent applications, I can look down here at CMU, and I have two options: CMU block and CMU blocks LSF. If I pick CMU blocks, if I come in here and start to add components, since this CMU blocks is just a square foot application, the idea is that you're looking at an elevation view of a building and you're just drawing a wall and just drawing the square footage of it. Notice that all I can reference from the parent is the square foot and the OCT. So if I'm trying to do stuff with linear footage and get some accurate information that way, I'm kind of up a creek. I can't get there from here. But if I had actually instead chosen to create this using the CMU LSF, so more of a linear line that I can assign a height to and get square footage that way. If I picked that, now what I can do is when I come here to this and I add an application, notice now what I'm left with is not only do I have the square foot and the output count, I can actually also reference the LF. So as you build kits, think about the way that you're going to measure it and what tools you're going to use, and also what item is going to be at the top parent item. That way you're left with the most flexibility in the things that you pick. So with that being said, I'm going to jump in here and we're going to create a little kit. We're going to create one here for roof decking, just as an example. Say that we want to drive maybe some underlayment, just as a simple example. I'm going to click up here in the upper left-hand corner, give my kit a name. Now, naming kits, here's another little tip that can be important, or at least is useful from our perspective. When you name your kit, give it a name that actually follows the parent application. So like this, I'm going to call it roof decking with underlayment kit. Now, this verbiage that you see here, this won't show up in your actual materials report. Instead, you'll just have the parent application name or a rename if you did that. But when you're going to pick an application, so as you're like drawing in the digitizer and you're assigning an application, you're going to look through the application list and you'll see this verbiage right here. So you can see, okay, this is exactly what I'm calling. So what's this going to be based on? This is going to be the roof decking is what we're going to pick as our parent application. Now, the rename, this is an opportunity for you to rename the application. I find this most useful when maybe even just the common, like you can see up here, this back from when we did CMU blocks LSF. If I don't want my report, my material list to actually say CMU blocks parentheses LSF, then I might actually rename that as just CMU blocks. That way it kind of looks normal, even though underneath it's still the LSF application. So, leverage the rename as you need to. Sometimes, or a lot of the times, you don't even need to bother with it. Last thing that I wanted to draw your attention to as you creating a kit is this ability to assign as a default for roof decking. Now, that is a can be a useful thing. For most people, we actually recommend keeping that box unchecked. And by doing that, you're going to have the ability to always pick explicitly when you want this kit. So if I leave this box unchecked, when I look through my list of applications and options, I'll have the option to pick roof decking. I can pick roof decking with underlayment kit, or maybe I create a third one in the future that's roof decking with underlayment and shingles, or whatever, or it's roof decking zip sheathing kit. So you could create multiple variations, and by leaving this box unchecked, you'll always be able to pick accordingly across the other ones. If you're interested in, in cases where you might want to use that, you can reach out to us in support. We can give you some more help that way. But we create our kit. We can see down here it's added to our list, roof decking with underlayment kit. And now we have the ability to come up here to add some components to it. So I'm going to click on this and add a component, and we're going to kind of breeze through this really quick, but let's just say that I want to do roofing underlayment. So I'm going to find roofing underlayment. Again, you have the rename field for the components. Now, in case you aren't following along, when we say we're adding a kit component, this is going to be essentially what you might call the child items of the kit. You have that parent at the top that's driving everything, and then underneath it are going to be all these other things that are coming along with it. And so you can come here and again, there is also lots of ways you can leverage these components. Sometimes you may want to have an initial product family. Sometimes you might not. Sometimes you may want to have an equation added in here. Sometimes you might not. So we have cases for all of these for ourselves of like where, we have an initial product family, but we have no equation. We have an equation, but we have no initial product family. We have both of those, or we have none of those. So you can leverage that several different ways, combining those different features. So just give a little bit of thought that direction as you think about how you want to use it. But setting the initial product family. So this what that means is when you populate the kit, will there be a product that automatically gets put into this child item? For a lot of people, this is really the behavior they want. They want something to automatically be populated underneath it. So let's say that we use 15-pound felt, and we always want 15-pound felt to come with it, unless I explicitly make a change. So I can select it. Now here's a quick tip. Just clicking on it doesn't select it. That means that you have now selected it and you can make an option. So right now I'm down here below, it says set as initial product family. I can click on that, and now that it turns bold, it is the initial product family. So that's how you're going to have a product show up. Now, for those of you who had asked or you were interested in the concept of how do we make kits in a way that make it easy to pass around to 3 or 4 different templates? How do we set that up? And so here's and what we mean by that is let's say that you have a template for your standard, and your standard is roof felting, your standard underlayment material is a roll of 15-pound roof felt. But then maybe you have Joe the builder who he likes the new, you know, different, Grace ice and water shield, or, even just a standard roof felt or a synthetic, and you want to use that instead. And for him, you want his preference to be that. So you go into his template and you set it as the preference for that. Problem is then as you pass these kits around from template to template, it's not necessarily going to come with the preference. So one of the things you can do right here is this checkbox up top. Is that when we set up this kit, instead of setting an explicit product family from the list, we can say, well, we want to have an initial default product family, but we want to just have it use whatever the default is been set for that particular application. And if you're scratching your head wondering like, well, how does that even work? Just pause for a quick minute here. I'm going to click OK. Okay, we've added it here, use default product family. So we said roofing underlayment, the initial product family should be the default product family. If I come over here to usages, and I come over here to single application, and I come down here to roofing underlayment, and let's see actually if in this template if there's one set, roofing underlayment, and there is. Turns out that the default product family, you can see by the red, that's been set in this template, that whenever I open up roofing underlayment, the default product that pops up initially is the roll of 15-pound felt. So that means the way that this is set up right now over in my kits tab, it's going to pull that and put it as the initial product family. But if I had moved this over to another template where that default product family was different for a particular customer, the kit is, in a sense, is still going to do the right thing. It's going to pull whatever that user wants, whatever that customer template really wants, but it's still actually going to populate it. So as you think about moving kits between templates, that can be a great solution, is use that checkbox right there. Okay, jumping down into the equation editors, a few of the things to keep in mind there. So the idea when you're building out your equation, what you are doing is you are making the input for you're building out what's going to show up in the input field. And so to understand that, let's just jump over here really quickly, and let's come over here to our roof, and you can see barge right here, or this barge trim application. Actually, I'm going to come down. Yeah, barge trim. That's fine. Oh, that'll be fine. So we can see here that as you look at, here's the drawn barge, and then down underneath is the barge trim. The really important, and then down below it is the rake soffit framing. Okay, so the important thing to keep in mind as you're building your equation for your kits, for your kit components, is you are not building this over here. This would be the output. And what's a common mistake that people get into is they think as they're building their equation, they're building this number right here. And you are not building that number. You are building the input over here. So when it comes to calculating what you're sending out, you need to think of it as that you're creating the input value that's here, which will then go through the normal process of formulas and waste factors and everything else to arrive then at this output over here. So, and that actually leads into the next comment of when you're building your equations, our typical recommendation for you is to not include waste in your equation values. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say roofing underlayment, you might say, oh, okay, roofing underlayment, I want to use the square foot of the parent. So I'm going to click square foot of the parent. That's what we're going to reference. And you might stop and you might say, okay, I want square foot of the parent and I want to add 10% for waste. And so you say times 1.1. Some would take this approach. We recommend don't build your templates and things this way. And the reason why is because we should instead just allow this to work with the square footage, and your waste factors should be set over here in your, like for example, in your area, let's see, is that area pitch for underlayment? Yeah, it is right there, underlayment. So right now this is getting a 15% waste. If that's what you want your roofing underlayment to be, then leave it at that. If you only want it to be 10%, use it here. And now wherever you use roofing underlayment, even if it's across 25 different kits, if you ever come one day to change this and say, well, I want an 11% waste, you've now just updated everything everywhere. You don't have to go to 25 different kits to make that change. So again, our recommendation is a general statement, don't build your waste into your equations. Instead, let the equations be driven from the formulas where it belongs. So then moving along to other things that you might use in your equation as you build out your equations. So obviously you can reference the things down here. Click up on the FX tool here to see different functions. So not only can you reference the SF type functions, you can also use if statements. And we're going to look at just this one I already have built out here. So here's a quick example. We have this kit that I've already built for miscellaneous connectors. And the way that we've set up this if statement is we have some uh, individual PSCL clips to go along with our roof decking. And if it's, and then we also have the option for a 50 clip box. And so you might want to say, well, if I'm less than 400 square feet or whatever it is, that's going to drive 50 clips. If I'm less than that, I just want to calculate the actual clips. But if I'm more than that, I want to calculate how many boxes of clips instead and send out an actual whole box. So you'll notice by use of if statements, we're basically saying, well, if it's less than 400 square feet, use this tool to calculate clips. But if it's more than 400 square feet, then use this tool to calculate it. So you can use if statements to create different behavior within the kit itself. So if statements can be a very useful thing to use. A ceiling function is another thing that can be useful to make sure things always round up. You can see I'm using that here. I'm using the square footage divided by 100 to get to a value, but I make sure I also round that up. That way I get to a total value instead of like some decimal value that's not very useful. Or maybe if I want to round up to the whole next number, so I'm getting a whole box and not have it be rounding down to where I'm getting a box less of stuff that I shouldn't be getting. All right. Um, One last quick note that maybe this is actually one that I came across more recently myself, and that is if you are using if statements and you want to use the equals sign. So to do your test of like, okay, is this true or is this not true? Greater than and less than usually work out really well, and a few other ones. But if you ever wanted to do an equals test, what you'll need to do in the context of this equation editor is equals by the sign by itself. You can notice here that my little OK sign is grayed out because it doesn't see that as valid. And if I come here, it's going to note by the way, here's a little handy tool if you're wondering what's wrong with your equation. Mouse over it, and you can see right here a little dot is indicating that this section of the equation has a problem. So this can be a handy tool to kind of try to figure out what's wrong with your equation. So with equals, you need to do a double equals sign. Once you get the double equals, it basically sees that as basically the equals function, and then you can click OK, and then that will apply that. So if you're wanting to use the equals operator for your if statements, just do a double equals, and you'll be able to use that. All right, and then last thing, and I know we're getting a little bit long here, but there was also some interest of like, okay, how do you create behavior that is unique to a different product in the parent? So a great example of this is actually the one that we're currently on. So let's say we have a roof decking kit and we're wanting to drive clips with it and a few other things. So I'm going to come up here to my top level item right here, roof decking kit. And you can see that I have a few things added already. Automatically, I'm getting for, and this is sort of generally speaking for anything that I ever call in the roof decking, I'm going to get this roofing underlayment and I'm going to get some roof bracing that's going to go along with it. But maybe also then I want to drive, if I'm calling 7/16 decking, I want to have 7/16 clips. So you can see here, and I've actually included 15/32 in this as well. So now what if I want to do something for my 5/8 decking? So while I'm in this kit, I can come up here. And by the way, there is another video in the video series that specifically talks about this, but just to kind of show you really quickly, I'm going to click on add a kit usage. And I'm going to call this my 5/8 clip section. And I'm going to find whenever I'm calling 5/8 inch decking, and maybe also want to add in 19/32 as well to get the same behavior. Click OK. And now you can see over here, I've got another item in my roof decking clip. I've got the sub item of 7/16, which has this, and my 5/8, which has this. Now, these are shown here because these are coming from the main kit section right up here. That's where these are coming from. This is going to populate down to all of the kit, other sub items that are underneath here. Whereas this, you'll see the 5/8 doesn't have the 7/16 option. That's something I can add in specifically for this specific bucket, this small, this, for specific use. So now when I build this and create this, if I call 7/16 material, the 7/16 or 5/32, I'm going to get this behavior with the 7/16 clips. If I was to add 5/8 clips here, then when I call 19/32 and 5/8, I'm going to get that. And if I was to call something that's outside of those two, like a half-inch decking, then at this point, the way this is set up, I would actually get nothing, no clips at all. So you can in effect now, so you might think, okay, well, that's interesting with clips, where else would I even use that? There's actually a lot of other places that you might want to use that. A couple examples, like say porch posts. Maybe you have a porch post and you want to call a specific size post base and post cap that goes with it. But maybe, that's going to change if you call a 4x4 post versus a 6x6 porch post. So you could create a porch post kit that gives you the right size cap and base automatically based on the size in use. Another example would be deck ledger band or deck ledger board or a band board or a top trim window trim where you're wanting to send Z metal, but that Z metal needs to be the right thickness depending on what material you're calling. Obviously, 1.5" material is going to be different size Z metal than a 5/4 or a 4/4 size. Another one that you might want to use this on would be board and bat siding kit. So if you call, say, a hardy board for the board portion, you want hardy battens to go with it. But then if you were to call just a standard CDX type material, rough sawn CDX, and you would want maybe just a standard, 1x2 cedar to go with it. So you could change the behavior and put it all in the same kit, but just get different behavior depending on what products that you pick in the parent item. So that's kind of the quick run through of maybe some of the smaller nuances. There are more. We're kind of running out of time here today, but again, find that it's in your chat section right there. I'm gonna pop it right there into the chat box one more time, just so you can maybe make sure to find it. Find that link that will take you over to our knowledge base article, which is a collection of about 6 or 7 videos on kits. So if you want some more details on that, and then as always, if you have more questions on how to leverage kits or you're in the middle of trying to build one and just something's not working out for you, definitely reach out to us at support. We're happy to answer those questions specifically and help you work through that and get to the answer and the output that you're looking for. So with that, thank you for joining us in for this series. And also we'll note that all these videos are posted on our knowledge base site as well, as far as the webinar history. So if you ever want to revisit any of these or send one of your colleagues back over to see some of these past ones, you can do that as well. Look for those in our knowledge base site. And as we have more opportunities to have another series in the future, we'll be letting you know about those and look forward to hosting you there. So thanks again for joining for all of these different sessions and have a great rest of your afternoon.